What's up, guys? How's everyone doing today? It's Monday, August 3rd, 10:15 a.m. here in Sydney, Australia. Wherever you are in the world, I say welcome, guys. It is our JSB community 1 year birthday. So we started the Discord this time last year. Up until a little brief history, real quick, I'll take a few moments to talk about that. And then we'll go over our weekend and then we'll do a little bit of a look ahead because it's a busy week. There's a lot of fights this week. And I know the boys in the group are already doing film study. So I'll stay on for a little bit longer. And then we'll get into this. But yeah, up until August of last year, I was just doing the Stats Don't Lie videos. Now, breaking fights down, but not giving you a prediction. And I always say it, our community, the JSB Insider community, our Discord, the boys in this chat, it is hands down the most researched, educated boxing community. I was explaining to one of my clients earlier. I was texting our group in the Discord because if I have a hesitation on a potential outcome, or let's say I'm very confident in a potential outcome, before I bet it, I will ask the group to make sure that maybe I'm not seeing, maybe they're seeing something that I'm not seeing. And if you're new to our, if you're new to our group, it's not what you'll learn very quickly. It's way more than just seeing who I'm betting on. It's all about the community. It's not going to be an echo chamber. You're not going to get 100% people agreeing. But the reason why we win consistently week in and week out, and the receipts speak for themselves, 1 year in, all the receipts are posted, is because, and this is what I always tell bettors, people who want to win consistently, is you can't bet, you can't have allegiances when you're betting on fighters. You know what I'm saying? You can't just take the same guy over and over just because he's your favorite fighter, or you just can't bet the guy because he's from Mexico and the other guy is from Puerto Rico, and you're taking the Mexican fighter because you. This isn't how professionals bet, and this is one of our greatest attributes of our group. Is the group will tell you how it is. If you want to win consistently and you want to read the game and study the game, you won't have any allegiances. Bet with your wallet, not with your heart. So with that being said, we turned 1 year old today. I say thank you. We're approaching 600 VIPs, which is super incredible. I'm super grateful every day. It's literally, I treat this just how I treat my coaching career. You know what I mean? I put just as much energy into this, and I'm excited to see what year 2 is going to hold for us. If anything, there were so many reads this past year from fighters or promotions that going into this, I wasn't exactly aware of. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, they were like, I couldn't tell you before this year I was watching Eye of the Tiger cards. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. Or I was watching Japanese domestic boxing. Or I was, you know what I'm saying? But now, having the whole year of experience, now I could tell you through the last year, promotional A sides, what they're doing here, manufacturing guys. Like, I know the sport. I grew up in the sport. So the sport and the film study is only half the game when you're betting and wanting to win on boxing. It's only half the game. You might think, what do you mean? Knowing the fighters, knowing the styles should be all the game. It's not always the case. You have to know the business side. You have to know the politics side of the game in terms of betting. And we're going into year 2, I got to tell you, with so much momentum, so much more experience, so much more knowledge. It's going to be exciting. So that being said, I'm going to take the next few minutes to talk about this past weekend, and then I'll give you guys the mic. All right, so real quick, that's Paulie when we did our live. This is a fight I didn't really have action on, but this was Conwell. No, this wasn't Conwell. This was on the undercard. No, that was Conwell. Charles Conwell looked good. It was good to see Conwell back. This was our live stream. We hit the Golden Boy card. We hit on everything. We hit on our live stream parlay. We hit on our boxing quad. We hit on our method of victory double. We hit on our dog of the week. So everything hit. The one bet I missed on the money line was the Queensberry card with Pierce O'Leary in an absolute firefight. Talk about drama. But as you know, and you guys are part of the team, if you would have seen all my tickets last week, I didn't have that fight on any of my tickets because I knew I was putting my bankroll. I talked about it all week. I was going. My bankroll was on Zepeda at plus 140. I talked about that all month based on the stylistic change, and I felt like I said it from jump that Zepeda was all wrong for Roach. Said it from jump. The receipts speak for themselves. So if you hit on that, congrats. O'Leary only appeared on one of my parlays, and that was way back in our July and August parlay. I just knew the fight, over the last year for me, these domestic UK fights, Ireland versus England, it's just not one of my overwhelmingly markets that I like to bet heavy on. So I did pick O'Leary. It was wrong read. It was a great fight. Shout out to Julius. He was on the show. He picked Chamberlain. He did a great breakdown. But mate, that fight was a roller coaster ride, which was insane. Shout out to Chamberlain. I didn't check the cards. You got to think going into the 10th, Chamberlain might have been down on the scorecards after jumping out to a huge lead. And then O'Leary just couldn't take the power, couldn't take the dis. O'Leary was just diving in too much and really was struggling with the range of Chamberlain. And Chamberlain was on point. He wasn't going to be denied. But what a fight. If you haven't watched Chamberlain versus O'Leary, go watch it. One of the I'm not going to sit here and say it was the fight of the year internationally, but a very, very exciting fight. Very, very exciting fight. Everything that is great about boxing was in that fight. Knockdowns, blood, people picking themselves off the canvas, the crowd, even the betting odds going like this. It was absolutely insane. So, but that was the one loss. Everything else hit. And this is a month in a row now of everything. Like, if you're playing along, this was the double. We took Morataya and Curiel on points, plus 102. And, this was, this is where I butter my bread. You guys know that. Boxing, where I butter my bread week in and week out, is seeing where the bookies get it wrong. And a lot of times with these opening odds, what we're dealing with as bettors is recency bias. You know what I'm saying? So Zepeda hadn't fought in a year. The last time the world had seen Zepeda, he lost to one of the best he lost to one of the most skilled boxers on the planet. So he's coming off a loss and inactivity. And then the last time we saw Lamont, coming off 2 draws against 2 really good guys. And I think this is why the odds were the way they were, with Lamont staying steady as the favorite the entire time. But if you pick this fight, if you took Zepeda like we took Zepeda, congrats. You should be on top. Guys, we're going to move on now. We're 8 minutes in. There's 50 of you in here. Like the video. I'll get to the chat. I'll get caught up with the chat. But I say this every time. If you are up, whether you're up 1,000, whether you're up 100, if it could pay a bill, withdraw it. Rebuild. I know we do have a few big fishes in our Discord, guys who win thousands of dollars. In the last month, we've had tickets over $100,000, and I know that could get a lot of people big-eyed. But keep your focus. If you remove the greed element, like I never tell you to do this to get rich. I tell you to do this. If you treat it like a business, you could use it as a, withdraw money. If it could pay a bill, withdraw it. If you're, one of the JSB insiders on Patreon messaged me, and he was like, Johnny, I don't know your bankroll. I don't know what you bet to get the 3,100, but nothing is worse than being up, having the last leg hit, and then not having anything to show for. There are variables. I don't know if this guy's on a roll. I don't know if he's used to winning, but I just told him, I was like, cash out. Take the 3K, bank it, and then rebuild. And so, in a lot of times, I'm not going to tell you that's my advice 100% of the time. If I'm up and I have a ticket that's giving me the ability to cash out, a lot of times for me, it has to do with, am I on a hot streak? It has to do with what my bankroll is, and it has to do a little bit of intuitive decision making. So there's a lot of variables. But if you're up, cash out, buy yourself something, pay a bill, do something to make it real. I always say that. And on that note, I'm going to say what's up. How good was that Zepeda performance? Yeah, Zepeda, I mean, I could talk about the Zepeda performance for the next 2 hours, guys. I use the comparison all week. The less Zepeda versus Shakur for 12 rounds, or Teofimo versus Shakur for 12 rounds. Both guys go the distance with Shakur, but 2 very different fights. I predicted that Zepeda was going to leave those 12 rounds with Shakur, and we were going to see an elevated version of him. We were going to see a better version of him. And I also, another part of my prediction was I never really put Roach at A+ level. And you guys were getting pissed at me for saying that. I'm not a guy who likes betting on a guy whose best moments came from fights in which on paper he didn't win. And then, I told you all week, I felt Tevin Farmer is very underrated former world champion. I felt Tevin Farmer gives so many people in Tevin's prime. Tevin gives so many people issues, and I just didn't put Roach there. And we got to see that. People were calling Zepeda a one-dimensional fighter. People who were taking Roach, I was like, you guys, I'm not seeing it. Zepeda had better feet than you guys thought, the people who picked Roach. Zepeda was way bigger. We knew that was going to be the case. And Zepeda's output and his decision-making. And Roach, I just didn't think Roach was going to be able to win the fight with a backhand counter. And some guys, I was debating a couple guys last week. They were talking about Lamont Roach had better feet than Zepeda. I was like, I challenged that. I was like, I'm not seeing it. I don't think Lamont Roach had better feet than Zepeda. I don't think Lamont Roach was a better fighter than Zepeda. And we got to see it. And I don't want to beat the drum too much because Lamont Roach is a solid pro. A- fighter, maybe a B+ fighter, definitely not an A+ fighter. And I always thought William Zepeda, with that style, he's the best in the world at that style. So I've always put Zepeda at the A level. And that version of Zepeda last night was the best version we had seen. That kid at 30 years old, that kid is a nightmare. He's always been a nightmare, though. Like, that kid has always been a nightmare for any fighter. And, I just, you better have some power if you want to, and you better have volume. You need power, you need volume to beat that guy. We'll see if anyone can beat that guy. Happy birthday, JSB community. We want to thank you. Well, it's a team effort, man. Appreciate you. Decency and camaraderie. I think the decency is really important. I know that early days in the Discord, I had to walk the plank a little bit regarding, I didn't want to gatekeep our Discord. I don't want to gatekeep your behavior. I don't want to project onto you guys. You're all men, younger men, older men, some women. And the last thing I ever wanted to do was gatekeep and try to tell you guys how you should be acting. Who the hell am I to tell you how to act, right? But over time, it's been really good to see in our group the men in there, the younger men in there, the women in there, holding yourself up to a certain standard, whether you win or lose. So if that means I have to call people out every now and then for speaking a certain way, I'll do it. We only have a few rules in our community. The major rules: don't be a dick. Don't treat people like shit. Don't be toxic. Don't be racist. Don't be misogynistic. Like, your mother, your daughter, your sister, your girlfriend could be in our group. And if you're a fella like my age who's 44, or a younger fella in their 20s, you should act as if your mother, your sister, your girlfriend is in that group. And I think our group, as we grow, approaching 600, even like last night when one of the boys, Roach, lost, one of the guys was like, F you to all you Roach betters, you could suck my, and I had to call him out. I was like, bro, have some decency. If you're winning, this is how I treat our group. In our group, if we win, we want to win with class, and if we lose, we want to lose with class. And I think our group does that really well. And I think that that's a rare thing in boxing, online boxing forums. Just go to YouTube boxing channel comments. You guys know. You guys know what I mean. What's up, Moonshot? That's crazy. The 1,000 VIPs is even a crazy thought. 600 VIPs is a crazy thought for me. I remember when our YouTube channel had 400 people, and we're approaching on YouTube 30,000, which is crazy. I look at our JSB community in the Discord and our live stream chat. Like, you know what I mean? So I've never really cared about our YouTube subscribers. Over the last year, what I really, the only number I kind of focus on is who's in our group and who watches our daily live streams. And maybe 2 months ago on the daily live streams, you guys, all the best ideas we've come up with has been through this chat. You got the chat started the Discord, the chat started the daily live streams. And like 2 months ago, the chat requested to do the live stream parlay. And some of the Patreons and some of the VIPs who don't watch the chat, when they see the live stream parlay when it hits, they're like, "You didn't post that ticket." I'm like, "Well, you didn't watch the live stream. I can't just spoon feed everybody. That's not. I'm not doing this to give you winning tickets. I mean, What I found out is, I want us all to win, and over time, I'm just, one of my strengths is picking winners. But I'm not trying to spoon feed people. So if you're new here and you're paying the $6 or $7 a month to be part of our community, and you're paying it just to get my picks, don't take this the wrong way, but you probably should leave because our Discord is filled with guys like Youngin, and the list is endless, who add value. We want our whole group is successful because we add value. Mutant Johnny, I've got a doozy of a bet, but I'm not telling it. Don't tell us, bro. Keep it to yourself. Salute Julius. Julius is a beast. After listening to his logic, 100%. I don't know if 79, he's really active on Gary's live streams, but 79 and I talk all the time on Discord. And after Julius's breakdown of the Chamberlain fight, I told 79, I was like, "Bro, I never flip flop. I never flip flop my bet, and I'll never flip flop. I'm gonna stand 10 toes down on my picks." And I think I mentioned it on the Paulie Malignaggi and Tommy Rainone live stream at the end. I think I did say, "Hey, if you guys are torn on Pierce O'Leary and Mark Chamberlain, and you want a good Mark Chamberlain read, go watch Julius on my show yesterday." Julius was out here watching Irish domestic television to do his film study. And if you're not following J Knows Boxing, do it. The dude's a beast. This dude was watching Irish domestic cable programming to see how the sort of zeitgeist of the Irish public were treating Pierce O'Leary. Julius was like, I don't believe in this preordained next one up sort of thing. I ain't buying it. And that was a slugfest. What's up, boys? Been eating since day one. E-money, we up. Morning, lads. 1 year up. Inking weights, we up. Yeah. Best community in the game. Back to the grind. There's Jay right there. Follow him. There's Jay right there. Follow this guy. Back to grind, boys. Hope ever. Yeah, let's pay some bills. That's what we should do. We save. We save money. We pay bills. While we work for our money, right? This is the crazy thing. The biggest lesson I learned from living in Las Vegas for a few years, and from having a best friend turned degenerate gambler, was that too often, like more often than not, people get addicted to losing. It sounds crazy. Part of the gambling addiction, and if this is you guys, take a break. Part of the addiction of gambling is like you could be up, and then there's a moment where you want to risk everything. That in itself is why these sort of people never win, but it's that rush. It's that endorphin rush of laying it all on the line. Guys, you don't win that way, and that's not how we gamble. That's not how we bet. So pay bills. When you start paying bills, and then over the next 6 months you realize, like, oh shit, money I used to work for to pay quarterly gas, quarterly electric, quarterly mortgage is now accruing because I'm like, if your bankroll is whatever your bankroll is, and you're up, 4x each month, you're going to have a long-term, you're going to notice it long-term. Don't be so greedy about it. Teamwork, brother, teamwork. Roach couldn't handle the pressure. Saw it. King, yes. Solution, hey, finally joined, big dog. Solution, if you guys are VIPs on YouTube or VIPs on Patreon and you don't have access to the Discord, send me an email right now. My email is in my YouTube bio, or if you're watching live, it's JONNYSTOFKO@iCloud. And on Patreon, you can just DM me. Capetillo, bro. The Capetillo knockout, it rubbed me the wrong way a bit. It rubbed me the wrong way because how happy people were to see a 17-year-old kid get knocked out. And I know those are just trolls, but it does come with the territory. I mean, I remember hearing about Capetillo when he was like 9. And you guys know who, this is a kid who is probably unfairly ordained by Oscar as the next face of Mexican boxing. And as a 17-year-old, they put him in there with, you know, I wasn't even like, we'll use Abdullah Mason. Abdullah's turning 22. He's a world champion. Abdullah won't be in his physical prime as a man probably until he was like 28 or 29. Like I didn't go through this, I was a late bloomer. I played, 3 sports up until college athlete. Up until I was 15, I played 4 sports, including boxing, right? I didn't mature physically until I was 18. So from the time, I think when I was 15, I was 5'2" at 15. And then when I was 18, I was right under 6 feet tall. So as a 17-year-old Capetillo, he's still a boy. And so that's kind of the danger with potential in a combat sport as boxing, of when you have all this potential and you're a highly touted prospect, you really have to pay attention to who you're pairing up this young fighter with. And we do have X factors. We do have outliers. Wilfred Benitez was a world champion as a 17-year-old Puerto Rican legend. But how many Wilfred Benitezes are there in the history of boxing? One of one, And we know actually the downside of that is being such a young kid and not being fully developed. By the time Wilford was, I think, in his mid-30s, he could barely speak. So these are things we must talk about. Capetillo will come back. He's only 17. Nothing takes away from his speed, his skills. He's going to learn a lot. He got cocky. He was cruising against a guy who was a 17-1 underdog, and he got caught in a range of with his hands down, getting caught with a jackpot moonshot punch. Shout out the youngin. So it does happen. You don't like to see it happen to 17-year-olds, though. Money Mooch. Yeah, Pierce O'Leary if it was fireworks. Dude, Jay's a beast. Our group is a beast. Is it just me or y'all worried about AJ's chin? What's up, Slick Picks? I'm not are we talking about Anthony Joshua? Yeah, so we're a community where we focus on the week that was and the fights that are in front of us. In full transparency, if you're new here, I don't really bet on Anthony Joshua. I mean, he's not even on our radar. You know what I'm saying? In terms of relevancy. And you should know the answer to that question. Chamberlain almost got stopped with dude, that body shot was gorgeous. It was interesting how Pierce was overcoming so much. Pierce O'Leary was overcoming so much. And Mark Chamberlain is everything that's great about the sport. That fight, those two, the crowd, I would like to see it again. If I'm Pierce, though, and his family, I would take a year off. Maybe I know Chamberlain said he wants the rematch, but with Mark, where he is in his career, he's been on the wrong side of a fight before. I think you move Mark along, and if the O'Leary rematch comes around down the road, do it. But I think for Mark's sake, his career's sake, will Mark ever be a world champion? I'm not going to sit here and say he won't. That he has awkward timing. His hands are not like he's slow, but he's long and he's awkward. And he was really switched on. It was I got it right, but I got it wrong. I couldn't have been more if I would have agreed with Julius and picked Chamberlain, I would have got it exactly right when I said that Chamberlain and O'Leary might look like Sam Gilly versus Aston Brown. And the Sam Gilly versus Aston Brown fight, we picked Sam Gilly as the guy traveling who was the underdog to win by knockout. And we were right. I kind of had it flipped this time because Chamberlain was that exact guy, the guy traveling, the underdog, and he stops Pierce O'Leary. So I'm not going to sit here and say I have 100% confidence in my UK boxing reads. I'm not far off, but you've never heard me on a live stream telling you to go full unit on the UK scene. Not quite yet. Just because the UK scene, the British scene, the Euro level, in terms of the competition, sometimes the odds are going to be extremely wide, but most times guys are going to be in the fight for whatever reason. And so I don't like betting heavy on those fights. But it was fun. If that body shot happened maybe a minute earlier, it was perfectly placed. It wasn't even, so the liver is the right side of the chest. It was like the solar plexus. So like there, dude, and that dude Chamberlain toughed it out. And O'Leary, maybe he was more hurt than everybody realized from the damage from the first 3 rounds, because he was still hesitant to jump on him. He kept getting caught at that mid range with those looping uppercuts too. I'm up, eating good steak every day. Get a mutant. We're eating. Bookie's got it wrong. I'm up. Johnson versus Thorson. Who you like? I'm torn. Look, Shernika Johnson, historically for me, I don't have 100% betting rate on her. I've bet against her before. The one thing you need to know about Shernika Johnson is she has this work rate, her output. She's like, imagine if a CrossFitter, maybe this is an old analogy. I'm not even sure if people still do CrossFit, but in the mid to 2010s, like 2014, 2015, CrossFit was everywhere, and it was just a fitness competition, but the endurance was absolutely amazing. Because I'm a strength and conditioning coach here in Australia, when you look at Aussie fighters, girls and guys, they all have strength coaches. And usually they'll all have a gas tank and they're all super fit. They're doing strength and conditioning. Shernika Johnson has a tank on her. She's always going to come in shape. She's never going to quit on herself. I know Thorsland, the odds are 50-50. I don't have an exact pick on this yet, but it's still hard for me to bet against Shernika. Zepeda honestly leveled out, which I honestly didn't think it was possible for him. He showed angles, footwork, patience. And yeah, you know what? Also, in everything that you mentioned, Barry, he also adjusted his guard. You know what I'm saying? He usually, in former, older fights as Zepeda, he's a little bit more up and down and a little bit more narrow. When he was pressing Lamont back, his base was wider, which gave him more balance in his base, and he was more, instead of split here, he was a little bit more shoulder up here, and he was using that to help cut off the ring. And I think he probably expected to Lamont to use the ring a bit more, but he just had nothing for him, man. And who's to say? And my whole thing was, if Lamont was a bigger puncher, I would have thought a little bit more hesitant on betting Zepeda. But power can change fights, and we just knew Lamont didn't have that power. And I told you, remember I said Kenneth Sims Jr. versus Arnold Barbosa Jr. in terms of outcomes and what, the fight might look like? Right now I'm leaning Simpson. Troy way too confident. Troy's 35 now. Troy could get old overnight. Dropping official pick. Yeah, so Jay's talking about Troy Williamson, Callum Simpson. You guys rarely ever hear what I'm about to say right now. I don't think I'm going to bet this fight. And it has nothing to do, and I'm not a fence sitter. If anything, I'm the opposite. If anything, I'm known for a guy who's standing 10 toes down. I'm never 50-50 on a fight. Sometimes it's controversial who I take, and, the internet gets a little bit crazy about my takes. But, when I'm right, I'm not going to, if I think an underdog is going to win, I'm going to go all in on that dog. Right? In this case, this Simpson Troy Williamson fight isn't that for me. Last year, in their first fight, I just remember how sick I was. So I think for me, this is going to be a personal no bet for me. So all week, you guys will be asking me, who do I like, Simpson or Williamson? Those in our Discord understand why I'm not touching that fight. And it has nothing to do with not knowing who's going to win. Has everything to do. Sometimes I feel certain rematches or certain fighters, as a gambler, you just stay away. I'm not putting one more dollar. I'm not putting $1 on that fight based off of what happened last fight. I don't want, I'm not going to put myself in a situation to have lightning strike twice. I thought old Zepeda was enough. Roach, new level, put on close shot, performance 10-2. Yeah, 8-4. I like 8-4. I like 8-4 in that fight. Zepeda, Roach. It's tough to give Roach more than 4 rounds. And some would even say it's tough to give him 4 rounds. He was just on he was on the short end of the stick the entire night. His body language wasn't good. He wasn't fighting confidently. He had these little moments, but these little flurries. I think Zepeda took a round off somewhere in the last 4 rounds. I'd have to rewatch it. And then I think in the 11th, Roach came out for like 30 seconds and had this flurry. But it kind of reminded me of, he's not going to ever quit on himself. He just didn't have the firepower. And that has to be a frustrating thing. I mean, both eyes were swollen. He was bleeding out of his nose, bleeding out of his mouth. And sometimes in fights, certain guys aren't going to be denied. Zepeda was not going to be denied. You were going to have to knock that guy out. And I think moving forward, at least for the next, enjoy William Zepeda while you can, by the way, because the style doesn't age well. He is 30. I think, his next few fights should all be firefights. I want to see him matched in unification fights with champions. And with Zepeda in that style and what we saw, he's the orange, and the juice that we squeeze from that orange is him at his full potential. And I want to see that juice. I want to see that orange squeezed. And because it's very rare in each generation, because he's not just a volume puncher, Swarmer. He's not just that. This is a world champion mindset guy who lives like a samurai, who's always in shape. He's not drinking alcohol. He's not smoking cigarettes. This dude is married to the game. And as a guy who lives his life super disciplined in his mid-40s like myself, that is one of the most admirable traits I find in fighters. And so I'm not going to say Zepeda is going to, finish his career not losing, but he's a joy to watch. Of all the styles in modern boxing, in a short list, he has one of the most admirable style. His style is super admirable, meaning everything that you see, how he works at such a hard output, that's his work ethic. You're not having that style without putting the road work in, without putting the reps in, without putting the rounds in, without the nutrition discipline, without the sleep and recovery discipline. This is how that's the only way you could fight like that. So when I say admirable, I mean all of it. I don't just mean the punch output. Like that kid, dude, that was one of my favorite performances of the year. That was a joy to watch. Absolute joy. And Lamont Roach, we never see Lamont get hit that. Lamont was getting hit clean. Lamont was getting broken down to the body. He's a guy who would never quit on himself. And Lamont's a guy who beats 99% of the fighters in probably 2 divisions. He just wasn't beating Zepeda that night. Are you a fan of open scoring? Going into last night, I would have said I was 90% against open scoring. But then I kind of it's a sort of complex answer because we bet and we live bet. So I don't how much of the open scoring is because I know a lot of the boys in our group are live bettors. Some of the guys who make the most money in our group are keeping their lights on because of the live betting odds without the open scoring. Because a lot of the sharps, they could see trends of a fight, the ebbs and flows of a fight. Even if a guy looks up, maybe in the 5th or 6th round, part of the beauty and the skill of a live bettor, and I'm not a live bettor because I don't get the options to live bet. It's just what I'm picking up on in our group. Part of the skill of being a sharp live bettor is knowing each fighter's sort of like storyline, how they fight, but also knowing the sport on where the fight is trending. And all the time, whether it's due to the commentary, Zuffa commentary being super biased, or the DAZN commentary, Sergio Mora being one-sided, the odds on live betting will reflect that because Sergio Mora will create panic or false hope in the viewer. And a lot of times the viewers are the bettors. And so that is swaying the odds. And a lot of times they're wrong. So I see it almost every week. The live bettors in our group will take advantage of those swings. And I think there's a term for it. Maybe the chat could educate me. There's a term for it when you're catching that read of a live swing of a lot, and then you're like, boom, and you go heavy on it. I see it all the time when it hits. Open scoring, I think, will negatively affect that. Because when you hear after 4 rounds a certain score, that's the score. No matter what Sergio is going to be saying. How many times have you watched a fight where you're like, this guy's up 4-0 or 3-1, and Sergio's like, it's a 50-50 fight. And then the viewers will think it's a 50-50 fight, and then the odds will show it's 50-50, that sort of thing. So that's kind of my hesitation. As a fan, a non-bettor, I kind of like it, because if you're a guy and you know you're down going to the ninth, you're going to fight a little bit differently. As a bettor, and for the boys who are live bettors, I would like somebody to explain it to me further in detail, if it's a good thing or a bad thing for live betting. And if it's a good thing for live betting, I would change my mind, because I'm all about our community. I want the boys, like, I want everybody to eat, and everybody has their own different strategies. So, there's guys in our community, if you're unaware, when I give out my 5 to 6 tickets a week, they're listening and they have a good read, but they're not putting $1 of their money until the fight starts. You know what I mean? And so it's just not my style. Strategically, I'm an early read dog guy, and you guys know that. But that's my take. It's a bit complex, isn't it? Nakia, McKenna, Galley, T-ball plus 260. Want to add one more? We're gonna build. Let's talk. We're gonna build these tomorrow. I've already been doing film study. I have my opinion on this ticket. I like it. There's like 1 or 2 fights that you could possibly talk me into right now and flipping. I'm going to talk to Barium. I'm going to, ask for Barium's reads. I'm going to ask for Julius's reads. Anybody in the group who wants to come on the live streams this week, let me know. I'll drop a link. There's just a few fights that I feel I want to make sure I get the whole thing about. Mosby had a rough start this week with the Pierce O'Leary pick, but Zepeda came through with the W and won big. Yeah, what's up, Mosby, man? And that's the thing, thanks for the super chat too, brother. It's the ebbs and flows. Just like the O'Leary Chamberlain actual fight. That's the life of a bettor. That's the life of a gambler. It's like this ebbs and flows. And I think as a team, what we do really well is we manage the valleys. We manage the valleys. Think about it. This is 4 weeks, and we took, January, February, March, April was the whole year's been insane. The whole year's been insane. But the last week of May and the first week of June, we were in the deepest valley we had ever been in. We had, things weren't hitting. We weren't getting close decisions. There was a draw. There was a couple, it was just 2 weeks back to back, and it put a bad taste in people's mouth, me specifically. But since then, this is 4 weeks in a row again, piggybacking off of the 4 months. So I think, moving forward as the bettor, if you are in a valley, it's okay to take a week off, even if you're up. I like what No Limit said. No Limit is one of our big fishes in our Discord. And, I've seen this kid hit for over 20,000. I've seen him consistently hit for 5,000-6,000 on the regular. He shares his tickets. He's just his bankroll's a little bit different, right? After the Zepeda win, he was like, I need a break. He was like, I need a couple days off. And I felt it, because we've been on a roll, man. And then this morning when I woke up, somebody was sharing film study on these fights coming up. And somebody said, mate, we just all won huge this weekend. Let's take the beginning of the week off and wait till Wednesday for film. And Barry Unboxing was basically like, there is no Wednesday. There is no tomorrow. He was like, that's the biggest thing why our group wins is there's so many fights this week. If we wait till Wednesday, we're going to be behind the 8 ball. And I totally agree with that sentiment too. So individually, if you're burned out, it's okay to take a break. I am a student of the game. I've already started film. I put check the tickets, boys. I already put a ticket up. I do have a 4-leg quad paying plus 123. So we do have one ticket that's live, and our quarterly parlay is live. That's a 12-legger that pays plus 683. We need Aaron McKenna this week, and then we need the last leg is in 2 weeks. Gotta watch the live stream because we affect the odds. Odds change quick due to the insiders. Love the channel. Good calls. Appreciate you, brother. The last conference last year was the best one. I love it when it gets me 100% decision. What's up, Mando? Let's go. What's up, Maz? Johnny JSB. We up. Yeah, you called that. Messiah beat my boy. The dog hit. I didn't get to watch any of the UFC. It was UFC Serbia. I got cooked in the UFC. I did 2 tickets. They both the triple loss because I bet with my heart. I picked my Slovakian brother. I didn't think that Ludovic was gonna lose, man. But you're right. You brought up a good point last week. Ludovic was coming off of a dislocated ankle. And he lost. And then I picked the wrong dog. I thought the Serbian hometown kid would be enough, and I think he got guillotined. So it was a bit of a heat check for me on the UFC side of things because I had hit on the UFC 4 weeks in a row as well. But it's good to get humbled. I think being humbled is a good thing all around the world, all around the board. I think the most shocking upset was Alan Garcia knockout. Oh, we're talking. Okay. What's up, Matt? Yeah. Thanks for the super chat. The Alan Garcia versus the Capetillo. They're up there, aren't they? They're definitely comparable. They're definitely comparable. How old was Alan Garcia when that happened? I've had my eyes on Gamrot too. You boys are savages. These boys are savages. It's Sunday in America, and we're already talking. It's Monday morning here. We're already talking about next week. I love it. There is a rematch clause, but what's up, Fat Boy? But Chamberlain said if Warren has to dig deep in his pockets, he wants it in the UK. You got to think, like, as a bettor, and as that no allegiance thing that I spoke about earlier, even though Chamberlain won and I picked him to lose, so I lost money. You gotta feel good for that guy. Like, you gotta let the kid call a shot. Now you want a kid like Chamberlain to get paid. You want a kid like Chamberlain to make real money. And from the other side of the token, you want the 26-year-old O'Leary to recover, take time off. You want him to rebuild. And he has that fan base. He could come again. You got to match him. You got to watch out who you match him with right now. If he's going to say he wants to get back in there, remember when you were 26, piss and vinegar, he's going to want to get right back in there. If I were his handlers, I would make him take I would make him take the year off, man. He took a lot of shots. Face got rearranged a bit. And because he has a name and a following, he's then going to want to go right back into a really big competitive fight. I would give him a feeder fight. I'd give him like not a stay busy, but let's eat fight. I'd give him like a guy who has a decent domestic record, who's not a puncher, and someone that he could get, back in the winning column with. I definitely wouldn't go right into the rematch, and I definitely wouldn't do it anytime soon. Boxing saved my wallet. Yeah, UFC. Yeah, that Serbia card was crazy. Those we do have a UFC channel, and we do have UFC sharps. The boys are wise. Guys in the Discord, what was the collective sentiment of the UFC channel this weekend? Did it play out? Were people up in the UFC channel, or were they down? Because it happened in Serbia, the first fight started at my 11 p.m. and it ended at 4 a.m. and I missed the entire thing. That cab upset was something else. I guess the booger sugar from Oscar. Come on. Matty B. The booger sugar. Nakia Mason wonders on the undercard. It's we're not getting odds right now, but this fight has piqued my interest. I was starting with Masson Floyd, but we got a couple Kiwis in the chat. Barium Boxing, when he speaks, I listen. In Barium, we trust. No one has 100% hit rate, but he had to remind me. And I was at the Nakia Apataya fight. he took on short notice. Nakia is a freak of nature. This is a super athlete, a 6'6" kid cut out of stone. Now, Mason is a guy who's going to stand in front of you and he gets hit a lot. He's tough though. He's going to make it interesting. I do have Nakia on the money line. What's up with Aussie women being so gorgeous? Maddie B, my girl's an Aussie girl. She's absolutely beautiful. I think there's beautiful women everywhere. If you didn't know, everyone knows we love the ladies. Yeah, so I don't discriminate. I love all. Like you can find beautiful women all throughout the world. Australia, I think that, yeah. I'm a bit biased though because my girl's Aussie. I agree with you. Lamont was looking for one shot here, and then he was pot shot, and Zepeda was just bringing and showing different hits. Yep, Thorsland is a dog. Like I could be talked into Thorsland. Sims versus Barboza Jr. When I was saying this, go to the live stream I did with, it was me, TJ from Chilltown, Julius, and Gary. The chat, two points of sort of contention in the chat. They were clowning me for saying that Tevin Farmer was good. And so I pushed right back. I was like, if guys are saying, if you're going to totally disregard Tevin Farmer because of his record or what he looked like in his last fight, getting stopped early against Floyd, then you really don't know boxing. Because Tevin Farmer was a world champion. Tevin Farmer was world class. Tevin Farmer is a nightmare for so many guys in his best days. He's mid-30s now. And then I said Kenny Sims Jr. And people, oh, Kenny Sims Jr. sucks. I was like, you guys, man, Sims Jr. is a lot to deal with for a lot of guys as well. He does a lot of things really well. He just doesn't do anything exceptionally well. You know, good fight IQ, technical, uses the entire, but he's not a big puncher. Doesn't really have anything that jumps off the paper that you know makes you remember. Doesn't have really these viral moments. And I just saw a lot of parallels in the matchup with Sims and Barbosa and Zepeda and Roach. And I'm not saying I've never tried to sit here and say I know anything more than anyone else knows. It's just my perspective on what I see based on being around the sport my whole life. And I think what's really helped is that I coach it. I coach technical boxing and I still spar. So I look at box. Somebody asked me on a live stream, I said boxing, I'm sparring to problem solve. And they're like, what do you mean by problem solving? I was like, well, hit and don't get hit. You know, you have a guy standing in front of you and you know the dimensions are there. You both have just two fists. Who could problem solve better with real consequences? You know, it's not just like doing story problems or mathematical problems. And if you get it wrong, you get it marked wrong. No, if you get it wrong, you're getting punched in the mouth. That's problem solving. So with all that, it's a big sort of, it's a big point of, thought that I go into with each prediction. Like you got to like, who's going to be the better problem solver in there with the skills that each fighter has. Refreshing. I see how humble, gracious Lamont was. Lamont's class act. Zepeda rather than make excuses. Yeah, Lamont's. You know what though? Something Lamont said that I was kind of taken aback by. He said in the ring, he said it. He said they thought Zepeda was one dimensional. Isn't that absolute? I found that insane because all week last week the Lamont Roach bettors were saying the same thing, and I brought it up here. Non-specifically already, is that when people were saying, it's one thing with fan bases to say a guy's one-dimensional, and then me thinking that they're wrong and believing that they're wrong, all things considered. And then when I hear Lamont say during fight camp, they prepared for Zepeda to be one-dimensional, that shocked me. Because I'm like, all right, so what's his dimension then? Just having volume? There's no way you could watch Zepeda versus Shakur. There's no way you could watch, even if all they did was watch Zepeda versus Shakur, there's no way you could just say Zepeda's one-dimensional. He does a lot of things well. It's not just the volume. It's the pressure. It's the looks. His punch variability. Think about how many different punches he throws. Punch angles. He level changes. He uses his feet. He comes in and out. He'll fight you in the pocket. He'll fight you at range. That to me is he's the definition of being multiversatile. Multifaceted. It's just that one of those elements of his style that he's best in the world at is the output. And he can punch. So good body puncher too. You guys were like, You guys last week were like, oh, Lamont's the better body puncher. I was like, I mean, what are we? I just didn't like. I'm never my goal in a debate, and you guys have seen this. If I'm debating anybody on a live stream, my goal is to never like be mean spirited or abuse somebody or make them feel inadequate. That's just how I am as a human. That's never my goal with even strangers. I never want to make anyone feel inadequate. But sometimes if I think the take is delusional, I'll call you on it. Like what fight are we watching that versus that we're saying Lamont's the better body puncher than Zepeda? Dude, Zepeda just doesn't rip the body. He's always done that though. He's level changing and he's turning you. And that was an addition though. He did, you know, him turning Roach to Roach's left to set up his lead hand body rip. Gorgeous stuff. A lot of that's gorgeous. That stuff's so technical. In the midst of a firefight, going from this lead shoulder to this lead shoulder and then turning him by exiting your back foot as Zepeda and then switching back and then throwing that lead hand to the body. I thought there was a moment where Zepeda was hurting him to the body, and then I was like, oh shit, is the knockout live? I'm a fan of Keyshawn, but he tapped out because he knew he was going to lose that fight, and I had Haney beating him. Keyshawn versus Haney. Yeah, this was a fight. This is a fight that has a lot of contention because a lot of the big YouTube content creators in America who have hundreds of thousands of followers, all they do is talk about like four fighters. All they talked about a couple years ago was Bud and EJ. All they talk about is Tank. All they talk about is depth. Like, I don't care about any of that, only because unless the fight is in front of us, unless the fight is on paper, unless our book is showing us odds, why would we waste the time talking about that? I don't care about them tweeting each other and people pulling out of fights and purse bids. And this is going to sound crazy. We can talk about that, but that's not our community. Like, I really don't like wasting time on that. We got a lot of stuff in front of us. We have a lot of fights within the next, 4 or 5 days to talk about. But if you want to talk about it, Keyshawn is a guy that has left millions of dollars on the table in the last year. So he's let a lot of people down. The Norfolk incident, the locker room incident, missing weight. I mean, where's he going to fight? Was the fight supposed to be at 47? Like, how is Keyshawn even this is something that, like, and go watch the live stream I did with Paulie Malignaggi and Tommy Rainone a couple days ago. When I brought this up to Paulie, he didn't even want to entertain it because what nobody is asking, these big content creators who are getting hundreds of thousands of views because they're giving you a personal or an emotional take on Keyshawn being a duck or Devin being a bully, is what they're not saying is how is Keyshawn a mandatory at 47? What are we talking about? He's a man at 47. Okay. How many times has he fought at 47? What weight class did he last fight at? Where is he listed to fight at? Like, I kind of agree with Paulie. He won't even entertain it. Zepeda versus Abdullah Mason is fireworks. Yes. I loved how Abdullah Mason was at the fight. Did you guys see the footage? Abdullah was at the fight with his back against the wall. Comes from a great family. That's a tough one for me, man. You guys know I'm a bit biased being from Northeast Ohio. That's a tough one for me, man. But Abdullah can punch. That is a fun fight, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. You guys are the truth. Stop. Commentators always be biased to cap. Don't matter. Just bet against it. Do you think betting apps or bookies know what we insiders see? Or they just go? Well, I don't know. I know in our group, Danny, based off of DMs that I get that I don't make public, in our Discord, we do have a couple syndicates in our group. So we have a couple guys who represent a betting syndicate that, like, when I get these messages, I get uncomfortable because I know their bankroll, and I'm like, fuck, dude. And I just tell them, I was like, look, don't listen to me. I was like, the last thing I want to know is you're betting 50K on a fight and you're listening, you agree with me. I don't want to hear that shit. I've never told you to listen to me. I've never told you. The last thing I need is the pressure of some syndicate betting 50 or 80 grand on a fight, and they're in our group. But I know for a fact when there are line swings on certain matchups, like I know why they're happening. Because there's I see it in messages like, oh shit, they just put 50,000 on him. And then the next day the odds shift. It's happened multiple times. The commentary, look, I'm not a guy who I like logic. I live my life through logic. I live my life through my own experience. I'm the opposite of living my life as a victim. I don't think life happens at us. I think life happens for us. And I think that every position in life that we are in, whether good or bad, we've created. So I take accountability for my fails, my successes, my present moment. So that being said, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm very logical. I'm not saying these things don't happen. I don't, it's sometimes hard to deny that a guy like Sergio Mora isn't giving awful takes to sway the lines. It's hard sometimes to deny that Max Kellerman with his glazing, and I'm not a guy that, Kellerman's been in the game for 3 decades. He's had his fingerprint on the pulse of the sport for over 3 decades, right? And at one time he meant a lot more to the sport than he kind of means now. And I'm not going to judge him for that. But, when he makes these outrageous takes in fight, it's sometimes hard to get past. Like, these cats, I know what they're doing, mate. These cats are crazy. Troll, I put on Morataya money lines, Zepeda, Roach over rounds to make 370. I had a truck repair the usual store. That was 370. Troll, baby. Guess what, Troll? We up. Good work. I love hearing stories. Buying the dip. There you go. So that buying the dip is that I'm learning from you guys is the term they use when you're betting live and you're looking at those odds and you buy the dip. Shout out. You can live bet Johnny, but you gotta call up sportsbet. It's at Skeezy. I'm not talking to a human. I'm not talking to a human. Like if you know me in person, which you guys probably ask Boss Christos. Boss Christos and I linked up at the Tim Zoo weigh-ins. He met me in person. This is exactly who I am. So if you met me in person, I'm gonna be outgoing. If you're my friend, I'll be the guy in public that we're gonna have a good time. But it's hard for me to meet new people. With that being said, I'm not calling a stranger. I'm not about to call a hotline, talk to a dude I'm putting money on. This shit makes me feel like a degenerate. Like psychologically, I'm not that strong. Yeah, exactly. We got Teo coming up soon. Who you got? Ooh, what's up, Live Life? I'm torn. I'm torn, man. I'm torn. I think Teo versus Raleigh is a very intriguing fight. I think people are looking a little bit too much into them being childhood friends. I don't think that's going to matter at all. I think the thing that has made Raleigh a 2 division champion and successful in most recent outings is that he plays on the fact of people underestimating him. There's certain personality types that you'll meet through life. Maybe it's a friend of yours, maybe it's a brother, a sibling, whatever. But certain people will crumble psychologically if they feel they're being slated. And then there's other types who will use that for their favor and they like being looked at as an underdog or they like being sort of, undervalued. Raleigh is a guy that we've seen. He'll play that role, especially in match, and he'll and then we've seen him overperform. I like Raleigh in this spot, guys. I like Raleigh in this spot. Obviously the power. I think he has awkward world-class timing. I think his timing is really underrated. I think because of his judo background, he has a high level. At one time as an amateur, he was a highly touted judoku in North America. So why is that important in boxing? You're like, Johnny, those are 2 different sports. Well, judokus, if you've ever grappled, I grew up wrestling in grade school. If you ever grappled or wrestled, you would know the importance of having a solid base, a solid foundation. And judokus, a lot of their sequences, what opens the door to their sequences, leg sweeps, tosses, judo throws, is that foundation. And you could see Raleigh, even in his clinch game, how he punches. He has a very, very solid foundation. He twists, he turns on his punches. His power starts from his hips. And then all that being said, we know the gifts. We know the God-given ability of Teo. For Teo, for me, this fight's at 147. We've seen Raleigh's power carry up to 47. Teo's not the biggest of guys. His gifts have always been around his athleticism, his speed, his reflexes, his sort of intuitiveness in the ring. When you add weight to that skill set, as you gain weight, some of those things aren't always the same. He's also a little bit older. That fast twitch, explosive athlete. I said it on a live stream a couple weeks ago. People didn't like when I said it. I feel the best version of Teo is that 20, 21-year-old kid. I don't think I think like in terms of what his skill set is and when he was at his best, I think he peaked really early. Not to say he's degraded a lot. I think if he has degraded, it's in the psychological department. I think this is a close fight. And if I could get Raleigh at plus money, it is going to be really hard for me, dog. That's all I'm saying. It's not my for sure pick. Steven Asplin. Christos, you got to come on this week, bro. One of our UFC guys. I mean, Q Salkild's in a tough fight. I was looking at the Q Salkild fight. Q Salkild's a tough Aussie. He's in a tough fight, bro. I'm actually kind of like flirting with the idea that he might be on upset alert. I need you to talk me off the ledge. Zepeda versus Tank is the next big money fight. I don't see any other fight bringing in more money in that division. Well, the division's stacked, boys. The division has 135 is deep. There's guys, and what is Shakur gonna do? I guess Shakur's at 40. He wants that 144 with Dev. Fight him at 144. I guess that wasn't your question. 135, Zepeda versus Tank. That is the fight, right? That's the fight we want to see. But, Morataya is supposed to go to 140. People are kind of giving him a hard time because he didn't stop a gold medal Olympian, former world champion who never been stopped. We played Morataya on points, which hit, and we played Curiel on points, which hit. And and we doubled that, plus 210. I never say it's free money. I know the boys like saying that shit was free. You'll never hear me say that because there's no such thing as free money. Or that shit was easy. No, I get more offended when we have tickets that hit. And mind you guys, if you're new, these are all plus money tickets. I get more offended when our tickets hit and people in the chat will go, that was free. I'll get more offended when they say that than if one of my tickets lose and people say I don't know shit about boxing. Because I know shit about boxing, so I don't get offended. But when they say that shit was free, I was like, you crazy. That shit was not free. There is no such thing as free money. Curiel decision goes up against a guy in Quentin Randall who had never been stopped. Morataya decision goes up against a guy in Conceição, never been stopped. Those weren't the only reasons I picked those two on points, but it had to play a factor. And Morataya was critical of his performance. I thought he fought well. I thought he was sharp. He does seem like a guy who's been boiling down a bit too much to make 35. People were talking about him at 40, but I mean, Morataya, like when I'm thinking about unifications at 135, how do you not want to see like a round robin tournament, win or go home with like Morataya, Abdullah, Zepeda, Tank, these sort of guys all fight each other. That's what we want to see. And there's guys in the whole top 10. There's a lot of guys that aren't maybe household names that would be exciting and brought into the mix. Now, you go up to 140 if you're Morataya. I want to see what he looks like against like Andy Hiroka, or he goes up what he would look against like GAR, Gary Antoine Russell, one of my favorite fighters. And we know GAR, how impressive he looked against Ryo, and then how kind of 50-50 nip and tuck he went with Hiroka, a big Japanese puncher. And so that's only 5 pounds up. I want to see. as a fan, I want to see how Morataya blends into the 140-pound division. There's a lot of fights at 140. So, Playo, Dalton Smith, I would like to see, I got to be honest, you guys probably will give me shit. I'm not writing off Matias yet either. I still think Matias's style with his sort of like how he punches and in the fight that he's going to bring to you, I just don't think Matias thought that Dalton would play his game. Matias had to be shocked that Dalton was going to play his game with him. And I was even more shocked that Dalton won at Matias's game. So at 140, man, there's a lot of guys there. At 135 and 140, man, some really fun divisions. Hopefully we could see some unification fights. Turkey turned his back on him so quick. He did. I'm not a big Turkey guy. Amanda Galley versus Sharetta. Look, Chicken Metcalf is what, 42 now? Galley's a slight, I don't know the odds yet. I might be slightly leaning Galley. Parker looking for, no, he signed it, Rez. So, Rez, go to our Discord. Boxing Booth, who's a New Zealand fighter. He's a New Zealand coach now. Either Boxing Booth or Barium shared that Parker found his heavyweight. Kiki pulled out, and they found a replacement, hopefully decent enough to match Hamiolo this weekend. Yeah, there we go. There's Boxing Booth. UFC went all according to plan except Klein, really. Uro's first-round knockout. Yeah, my regret of the UFC weekend was not paying, I didn't see the Euros first round. Euros by knockout, I was telling everyone that's the move. But it was only paying 44%. You got to be sharp like Big Shadow and pick the round, which with all the action we had with the big Golden Boy card, and I never try to fool you guys. Boxing is my bread and butter. I do watch UFC since John. I've missed a handful of cards in the last 20 years. But in terms of this newer edition of my content, boxing will always supersede MMA for me from film study, from bankroll, from focus. Now, granted, during the White House card, we didn't have boxing that weekend, and or the Connor card, and we won a lot of money. We find our victories, but I can't put as much energy as I do in boxing in the UFC because I think UFC betting is a bit more volatile historically. I think because there's so much parity in the UFC, it's not as, I don't want to say predictable, it's just more volatile. And I like the less volatile market in terms of equity when you're looking at just finance. You want to try to find markets that will optimize your revenue, but also be less volatile. So when I'm weighing the odds of boxing versus UFC, boxing wins every day. One of the underdog fights is Renee Ranger, Manu Vitueva, a rugby player. And guys, I think Rez is a Kiwi too. You boys are in New Zealand. I'm going to be leaning on you guys in the Discord. I expect you guys to share knowledge like Boxing Booth and like Rez, because I don't have these insights. You know what I'm saying? We had a Kiwi card. We had the BX9 card last weekend we streamed, which was a fun card. And I'm down for it. There's so much more knowledge I need to be well-versed internationally. I need to up my game on the New Zealand domestic scene. Navajo KO and Jan first round was a surprise. Safe, bro. Oi. Nakia versus Mason. Boxing Booth. Nakia versus Mason. Go. They did find out. Calling him exactly. Yeah. So, granted, Lamont was humble in defeat. I blame that on, you got to blame that on his camp. Because Lamont's he's an educated guy. I've watched so many interviews with Lamont. I've known about Lamont for years. Well-rounded, respectful, gentleman. But hearing that, especially after the way he got beat, that's what he said. We thought he was one-dimensional. I would like to talk to him about why they thought he was one-dimensional. How could you think Zepeda was one? I've said all week that I put Pitbull way below Zepeda. I've called in the past, and I'll stand on it. I'll call Pitbull Cruz one-dimensional. I've never been sold on. I get the star power, I get the marketability. the style. But I've always said Pitbull is a level below Zepeda in as quality fighter. And I know that's gonna offend people, but I'm just saying what I see. Zepeda does a lot of things good, man. And he does, he added more head movement. He was fighting from the high guard. Uh from the punch versatility, not everything from the body punches, but how he was. I told you guys about his lead hook. His lead hook was landing, and the game plan was great as well. He knew that the backhand counter. How did you? This isn't me playing Monday morning quarterback, but I was asking the live stream all week. How are we seeing Lamont Roach winning with his backhand counter? Because it would have to be a knockout. And he's not a knockout guy. It's always easier to go hindsight 2020, especially when we win. Sub Johnny, early thought on Tyler, Denny, and Callum, thinking it could be a good dog hit. Danny looked decent with George Litter. He did, didn't he? And we rate George Litter, and I don't really rate Callum Walsh. I think I actually think stylistically, though, this is a good spot for Callum. And this is one of the rare fights that I'm going to side with. I've never been one to ordain Callum Walsh as the next in line. You guys know that. Having been a UFC Fight Pass member for over a decade, and for the last 5 years, Dana White force feeding us Callum Walsh on Fight Pass during the Hollywood fight nights against like Uber drivers. So, but I think Callum, in his last few fights, he is showing me a more well-rounded game. He is showing me he is getting better bit by bit. Not making huge jumps, but he's still young. He's big. He's hungry. He's athletic. He's always prepared. I think where Tyler Denny is in his career, I do like this spot for Callum Walsh. I'll be around, boys, but I need to take a little break, reconsider my betting strategies. All right, youngin. Knowing your wins and knowing your style, if you listen to any advice I would say, start small again, not from a equity perspective, but from a legs perspective. Get back to your winning ways, minimize it. Go for the next few weeks, be minimalistic about how many legs we're putting together, rather than taking the plus 210 at knockout, take the $1.84 on the money line, these sort of things. Because you're right there. It's just that to consistently win with your strategy, you have to have a time machine. And that's a compliment to you, because I don't see many guys who've showed me multiple tickets, let alone one, over the last 6 months that have hit like you do. So I would say managed risk would be your biggest work on. It is fun to hit those big boys, but it's also fun, to consistently hit. Like you guys know me, I'm a plus 200 guy. It's just where my bankroll is. I'm grateful where that is as well. So when I do get reckless, it's usually for the entertainment side of things. But and from speaking from experience, I've won the most I've ever won in my life this last year from going. I used to be like a plus 600 guy from because of the chat. Like I found over when I give my tickets and shit's losing, I'll say, why am I losing? Oh, because it's a fucking plus 800. It's a plus 600. These folks don't want to be part of your community because you're giving them plus 800 and no one's winning. And so then I was like, all right, what's my point of difference? I'm going to make plus tickets. Every ticket, you're going to at least double your money. So that's the way I look at it. Every bet I'm going to make, I'm going to at least double my money. And when we're doubling our money, if we're using, investment strategies, that's unheard of. This is what doubling your money. That should be the goal. Everyone wants to win the lottery. You got to have a long-term approach. Take care of yourself, youngin. Thank you, bro. You cashed me out last night, G. Saw you rocking with Paulie, so I had to ride. What's up, Mackie Sharp? The big fella. Appreciate you, man. Yeah, Paulie's my guy. I've known. I always talk about, and this is from a fight. Like, I grew up in the boxing ring. I never fought after I was 15. Parents made me stop, which is fine. But I was playing baseball, football, and basketball too. I come from a boxing town, so I grew up with a kid on that. My childhood close friend became the middleweight champion of the world by knocking out Jermaine Taylor, Kelly Pavlik, And so I was on Kelly's whole rise to get to the Taylor fight, from the Zertuche fight in Disneyland to the Edson Miranda fight to the Jermaine fight in Atlantic City. But I always say, without being biased, in 2008 when he knocked out Jermaine, one of my favorite boxing moments, I think it was 2004. It was Puerto Rican Day Parade in New York City at the Garden. And you had two young in their early 20s, an undefeated Italian American and an undefeated Puerto Rican. And the Garden was split in half, and the Garden was electric. And it was Cotto versus Malignaggi. And Paulie came into that fight looking, as if you haven't seen Malignaggi versus Cotto, it's one of my favorite fights because it had so many ebbs and flows, and Cotto looked like he was going to stop Paulie early. Paulie made incredible adjustments, started winning middle rounds, late rounds by doing his beautiful defensive boxing, and then lost the decision. But the crowd is one of my favorite moments. It went the distance. Paulie looked like he got beat up by 10 guys afterwards, but it was kind of like what catapulted both guys into what ended up being Hall of Fame careers. But Paulie, I've known Paulie for years. King Callum will win. 112K, my guy. I love hearing that shit. I think Nikhil will get Floyd out of there. Mason, tough old boots, but way too hittable. All right, this is what I see too. Boxing Booth is a coach, boxer from New Zealand. When he speaks, you should listen. And this kind of what I'm seeing too. I've won money on Floyd before, and Floyd, he's heart and guts, and determined. These guys will both fight for your money. If David is who I'm being told, and shout out to Action Jackson John England. Action Jackson John England, he's ranked number 13 by the IBF at 130. He has a win over Jamel Herring. He has a loss against Liam Wilson. Hopefully we get to see him soon. But Jackson John England is promoted by David. And he was telling me about Nakia for years. He's like, you got to keep an eye on this guy. And so when Jackson speaks and when Boxing Booth speaks, I listen. I fucked around and spent 100K on a fight because Johnny's... You spent 100K? Oh, no, he's lying. We got the trolls in the house. We got the Johnny money, man. We hit this weekend. We got Harry Frog in the house. Facts, Roach was 180 down to 130. Matty B. Tail Raleigh said tail line of 5K. Yeah, I like both guys. Raleigh's a scary man. He's a judo black belt too. He'd easily dog walk any boxer in any real fight. He'd probably do decent in the UFC. Yeah, because if you're a highly talented judoku, you're gonna be able to defend the takedown. You're gonna be able to sprawl. You're gonna be able to judo trip. You're gonna be able to wrestle in the fight, in the clinch, and you can box. So those are two great foundations to have. And I think there's a few standing. I think there might be a few standing submissions from the judoku. I'm not quite sure. Don't quote me on that. But those are two solid foundations to have, judo and boxing as an MMA fighter, 100%. I got Teo A4. Raleigh definitely going to be plus money. Muay Thai is dangerous for Shakur. Hot take. Muay Thai is dangerous for anyone. I mean, when you watch how determined Raymond fights, and you watch how he's always in shape, you watch how he speaks, like this. Boxing is in great hands, guys, in terms of like the athletes, the younger guys, the younger champions, how they're carrying themselves online. It matters. I think there's the generation who are like in their late 20s, because they were kind of the first boxing generation that like TikTok, Instagram, tweeting back and forth. You know who I'm talking about, the generation with Tank, Shakur, Teo, Ryan. But I think the younger guys, and I know Mortaya isn't, Abdullah's age, but when I see guys like Abdullah Mason, who doesn't buy into that shit, he's just super switched on and focused. It's almost like the younger guys are learning either how to be or how not to be. And I love when I see, champions who are saying, you got to market yourself. And I like to think our sport is in a place to where the results will speak for themselves. Like, I'd like to think that you don't have to be online to grow your brand. We know that part of it is you do have to have a sort of digital footprint, but it shouldn't be the only thing. And guys like Shakur, or guys like and Shakur's one of my favorite guys. Guys like how Mason is, I kind of my person gravitate more towards that sort of approach. Let your action speak for itself. If you use it for if you want to fight. You tweet somebody, you call somebody out. Like Tiger, I'm a big Tiger Johnson fan. I want to see Tiger. I want to see Tiger versus Dev. You guys are gonna kill me for it. I think Tiger's length. I think his skill set. I think his jab. He's not going to have the speed advantage. I like how he's filled out at 147. I like how confident he is. I like that he's been calling for this Devin Haney fight. I guarantee Tiger would be like a plus 350 against Dev. Psh, that's all I'm going to say. I hope Tiger gets the Devin fight. Raleigh's plus 90. It's really tough to not take Raleigh in that spot. I got to be honest with you. Raleigh plus 200. Plus 650. Dude, we got some good fights coming up, Fat Boy. Boxing Booth says free money in the air. Yeah. Yeah, there's no free money, dude. Boxing Booth knows. I think Boxing Booth might, I'm not saying you're as old as me, but I've watched your videos online. You don't seem like you're in your early 20s, so your life experience is a little bit more expanded than some of our. We have a lot of young bucks in our group, which is fine. It's good to, I think us, if you're in a little bit of an old head like me, leading by example isn't just picking winners. You know what I'm saying? There's no such thing as free money in betting. Honestly, I can see a world where Zepeda goes undisputed. He's such dude. So we brought up earlier. Will Teofimo, true or false? Did Teo leave pieces of himself in the ring versus Shakur? And I'm not just talking about physical. He disappeared in that fight. And, they both go 12 with Shakur. Zepeda obviously took from Shakur in a good way and leveled up. I don't see the way Teo got beat, him leveling up, sharing those rings. If anything, I think that it's going to deter him. I think this is a good spot for Raleigh. I do, man. Tank wouldn't fight any of them. He's too interested trying to fight Bam. That's insane. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? Tank's trying to fight a kid who cut his teeth at 112 and 115, 118. He wants to fight Bam. One big on Zepeda. Appreciate you. I'm from Dunedin. We got the Kiwi boys in the house. Tough as nails. God's country. Beautiful part of the world. Love it. Thank you, RC, RM, WZ. All points will subscribe to your picks. Appreciate you, Mayo. I'm from Vegas, 5 years boxing with Beast Boxing. Raleigh was one of them teammates. What's up, Mayo? Appreciate you, man. We got a lot of fighters in here. We got famous Coach Bermudez is in our group. We have pro fighters in our group. We have amateurs, Commonwealth Games fighters in our group. Sugarcane Sandoval. I'm not going to tell you what his name is. Sugarcane's my boy. Youngin, that's right. Copy 2 slips. Thanks, pal. Raleigh by knockout. I'm 26 this year, and I feel like, damn, I've learned so much more there. Whole life in front of you, young buck. Once again, happy birthday, JSB. What a year. It's been great for all the people we became friends with. Yes, sir. Guys, we're almost 90 minutes in. I have to eat. I haven't eaten yet today. I've been up since 5 a.m. coaching, talking to my boys, our group. It's Monday, August 3rd, 11:38 a.m. There's about 75 of you still in here. We're about 90 minutes in. We have a big week in front of us. We have a lot of fights in front of us. There's a lot of money on the table. If you ask me about Troy versus Callum 2, you could ask me about it. I'm probably going to defer the question to somebody else. You should, if you're in our group, what I just like. What I like doing is, if in rematches, this will be the first rematch where I think I'm just not going to bet. It's because I don't want you guys to think, oh, it's a rematch. He lost money on Callum. That's why he's not betting. No, it got way deeper than that. The Callum Simpson loss to Troy, it made me change my strategy of betting, which was great. It's a very, for me, memorable pivoting in my betting strategy. He was a massive favorite. This is when I didn't have boundaries on throwing big favorites on a lot of tickets, and everything hit that weekend. I just happened to have Callum Simpson on every ticket, and it was the most money because I had him on every ticket. It was the most money I lost all year. All year. We had a meltdown in the Discord. Folks were getting banned, kicked out. People were sending addresses to meet up and fight in person. This was during the first one. And so lessons I learned from that first fight was like, all right, you got to stop being greedy. You got to be more logical. Why would you put $1.10 on more than one ticket? Why is $1.10 showing up on every ticket? And so I changed my strategy. Like I had like a plus 400 dog, a plus 300 method of victory, and then Callum Simpson on the same ticket. It's like, what the fuck? Like, why would you do that? And so this is me learning the game. And now when you see my take, and this is a lot of the success we've had since January, probably is due to what happened during their first fight. Now you see things much more strategically placed in how I bet. Everything's still plus money, but you'll never see anything under like $1.10 on a ticket, and you'll never see $1.10 on more than one ticket. And so I'm just going into this rematch like I'm not going to bet it. That's just my perspective. And I'm not going to do film on it. If you ask me who's going to win, I'm going to say your guess is as good as mine. But we will have a lot of action on that fight because our group, we're in it for. We love the game. That's just one that I'm not going to bet on. Coach Darwell was my coach too, so I got to meet Devinhaney and Zab Judah since he was in there. Zab is a legend, man. I love the, obviously I still coach and I live my life like a samurai. I've taken care of my body my whole life, and I've always valued fighters, coaches, men in general, whatever you do. So I hosted an entrepreneurial podcast for a few years, and I would interview like experts in fields. And I was interviewing this biospinal mechanic. He's in his early 70s. He's the guy who helped rebuild George St. Pierre's spine after the Matt Serra loss. Dr. Stuart McGill. He's a Canadian. Shout out to Dr. Stuart McGill. His online brand is called BackFit Pro. And Stuart McGill, I podcasted with him a few times, and I remember getting off the podcast with him, and he's, talking to me about the benefits of, the direct correlation of grip strength and life expectancy in men. And so since that chat in 2015, I do dead hangs every day. And then obviously the benefits of dead hanging with the effects on alleviating pain in our spine and correcting postural deficiencies. So I've always I don't admire like millionaires. I don't admire wealth. I don't admire objects. I admire men who are healthy later in life. My dad died young. He passed away before his 60th due to not living a healthy lifestyle. So this is just something that I take personal. I said all that to say I don't agree with Adrian Broner, obviously how he lives his life, but who am I to judge? What I do agree with, I like how he gave Zab Judah some stream time the last month. It was great to see Zab in Broner's streams and to see those clips going viral. And a lot of the clips going viral were like the headline, 49-year-old, 50-year-old Zab Judah still in fight shape. I'm like, of course he is, because he's a savage. He's a world champion. He's a samurai. This is a guy who, my whole mindset is and has always been that at 44 years old, and I've been this way since I was 30, always been an athlete, but before my 30th, I was reckless, partying, absolute nightmare to deal with, both in relationships and out in pubs, just a lunatic, like a lot of you young bucks are. But I made a change when I was 30, and my whole approach has always been, I have to live my life like I have a fight coming up. I always have to be prepared mentally and physically as if I have a fight coming up, whether it's like an unexpected health diagnosis, my body needs to be in the best shape possible. If I have like horrific, God forbid unexpected health diagnosis, or if somebody's trying to get one over on me in public and I have to protect my loved ones. So when that's how I live. That's literally the focus on why I train and keep fit and keep healthy and all this good stuff. Stay active, run, power lift, box, write, read, learn, all this good stuff, mentally, cognitively, physically. But to see Zab Judah get his shine and a whole younger generation of streamers say, who is that guy? I'm like, well, you better learn. You better ask somebody who Zab Judah was and is. On that note,